What's up, everybody? Thanks for dropping in. Stoked to have you here. And if you're here, you're probably looking for a new bike, which is awesome. I'm excited for you. But chances are, if you've gone into a bike shop lately, showroom floors are empty. It's kind of a mess, and you're probably trying to figure out what to do. So stick around. We've got some insight that should help you understand what's going on and what your best options are if you're looking to buy a bike this year. So hang tight, let's get into it. See ya. What's up, everybody? I'm Silas. Thanks for dropping in. It's great to have you here. So we've got a lot of information that I'm going to dive into so that you understand what's going on in the bike industry right now and how you can get a good deal on a bike this year. But before we do that, I want to give you a little bit of a backstory on the bicycle business so you understand how we've gotten to this point. So the bike industry historically grows at a pretty slow and steady rate. If you look at the last 20 years or so, there's been years it's grown a little bit, there's been years it's been down a little bit, but historically it's kind of stable, we'll say. And that means supply and demand is pretty stable. Now in the spring of 2020, we had this multi-dimensional effect that completely disrupted this stability in the bike industry and has had this long-lasting effect that we're kind of still experiencing now, which is why there's a shortage of bikes, which is also why the prices of bikes are going up. So we're gonna dive into all that. Stay with me. This is gonna get a little detailed, a little nuanced, a little nerdy, but I think it'll help you understand what's going on and help you make a good decision this year. Now, in the early spring of 2020, we'll say we entered stage one, which was really kind of panic. That's when everybody really started realizing the seriousness of COVID and governments started shutting down businesses. Bike shops were really at first treated no differently than restaurants or theaters or any other business, and they were forced to shut down too. With all this uncertainty of what the future would hold, bike shops did what any responsible business would do, and they canceled large pre-season orders with bike brands that would normally be showing up in the spring to stock their shelves for those busy selling months. So in response to that, bike companies went to their factories and said, hey, we've got a problem. Orders being canceled. Bike shops are being shut down. Stop production. Now, at the end of March in 2020, the US federal government deemed bike shops an essential business, which allowed them to open back up. And around the world, we saw kind of the same thing take place. Most governments allowed bike shops to open, albeit in a very limited fashion with strict protocols and a lot of them only being able to do repair services. So while there was this reopening of the bike industry, most bike shops continued to play it very conservatively because they really didn't know if they'd be able to stay open, if they'd even be able to sell bikes, or if they'd only be able to do service work. So in the end, there was really 3 or 4 months there in the spring of 2020 where bike brands reduced or completely stopped their production lines altogether. And this is where we enter stage 2, which was the frenzy. So in the summer of 2020, we saw this really interesting, unforeseen dynamic start to emerge. People were working remotely from home, vacations were getting canceled, gyms were closed, there were stay-at-home orders, which did allow outdoor exercise. So people turned to outdoor recreation, and especially mountain biking, as a way to get out and stay sane. So in June and July of 2020, there was a massive increase in demand for bicycles. People were flocking to bike shops to get whatever they could get their hands on. So as bike shops started to see demand go through the roof in the summer of 2020, bike brands reacted. And this is where we entered stage 3, which was the response. So bike brands see this massive increase in demand, and naturally they react by increasing production as quickly as possible. But this happened across the entire business. Every bike brand known to man saw an increase in demand because as the top tier brands started to sell out on what they had, naturally the second tier, the third tier brands, the ones that aren't as desirable, they started to see demand because bike shops were looking for anything they could get their hands on. So naturally, as demand increased, bike brands responded by increasing production as quickly as possible. So in turn, the time to manufacture a bicycle had increased 3 to 4 times because these factories can only output so many bicycles at any given time. And also keep in mind that they had their own COVID protocols going on at the same time. So in response to these manufacturing timelines increasing, what did the bike brands do? They ordered more. It's kind of crazy to think, but at the same time, if we think back to the spring of 2020, there was a toilet paper shortage around the world. Now, what caused this? We weren't going to the bathroom more. No, it was simple psychology. And it's as simple as thinking, if we can't have something or we fear that it is scarce, we do everything we can to get our hands on that. This happened with toilet paper, and then it happened with bicycles from the bike brand side. They started manufacturing as many bicycles as they could because they feared that if they didn't, they might not get their place in line and they might be late to the party. So by now, currently, most bike brands have about 3 times as many bicycles on order for 2021 as they have historically over the last 10 to 20 years. That's an absolutely insane amount of bicycles that are being manufactured currently. So by the beginning of this year, 2021, we saw that increase in production starting to show up on showroom floors. According to the US Department of Commerce, 49% more bicycles were imported in January 2021 compared to January of 2020. That's a huge increase, way bigger than anything the bike industry has ever seen. So what does all this mean if you're looking to buy a bike this year? On the supply side of things, it means there will be a lot of bikes showing up in bike shops. Now, there's a backlog. There's a lot of people who have wanted to get a bike this last year who weren't able to. So we're going to see that inventory turn over the next few months. Now, on the demand side of things, that's where I wish I had a crystal ball, but I have a pretty good idea of what might happen. I think a lot of people will go back to their old way of life. They'll go back to eating out more often, going to movies, going on vacations, and they'll lose interest in mountain biking to some extent. And that's great for you if you're looking to get into mountain biking, because what it means is that demand will start to taper off right as supply is really ramping up. So now let's get into the good stuff. The reason you came here was to figure out what you should do if you're looking to buy a new bike this year. So let's dive into 3 good options I have for you for buying a new bike this year. Okay, option number 1. If you know exactly what bike you're looking for, you've done your research, you've got it picked out, get down to your local bike shop and ask them when they can get it for you. Now, chances are it could be 2 to 3 months before that bike's available. I would highly recommend asking if putting a deposit down could help you out. Also, bike shops can get in touch with the sales rep from that bike brand and have them try to track down that bike from another shop. And sometimes they can transfer those bikes to your local bike shop and have it to you in much shorter time frame just because they put in a little bit extra effort. So ask them nicely if they can do that for you or if they have that ability. So option number 2, maybe you already have a bike and you're just looking to upgrade in the next year, or maybe you're a bit more frugal or just more patient. I would highly recommend, if you're in that group, you wait out the market until late fall, early winter of 2021, going into 2022. I truly think we're going to be in an overstock situation in the industry within the next year. And what that means is that there will be an abundance of bikes that will be getting discounted. So if you're patient, hold tight. I think there's some good deals coming. Now, option number 3 is the used market. And if you're a little bit more familiar with bicycles and you have a little bit more knowledge, used bicycles can be a great deal. Now, there's a few good places you can find a used mountain bike, and I would say Facebook Marketplace is probably your best bet. And the reason for this is because it's like the modern day Craigslist. You can find something local that suits your needs, go check it out, make sure it fits you, make sure it's actually in good condition, take it for a test ride, maybe even take it into your local bike shop to have them look it over before making a purchase. Now, the second place you can look for a used bike is actually at your local bike shop. Just like car dealerships, a lot of times they'll take bikes in on trade-in from somebody who's looking to buy a new bike, so they'll have some used bikes available. Now, it might be hit and miss if they have the bike that you're looking for or the right size for you, but if they do have what you're looking for, a lot of times they'll have tuned it up, looked it over, made sure it's ready to hit the trails in its current condition. Now, another great place you can look for a used bike is on pinkbike.com. It's a mountain bike website. They have tons of great content, but they also have a really good used bike section. It's called Buy Sell up at the top of their website. The one caveat there is that these bikes will not necessarily be local. You might be able to find something local, but chances are you'll find something great that's 400 miles away from you and has to be shipped, has to be assembled, and there's a good chance you might not be able to see some of the things that could be wrong with that bike before buying it. So really do your research before pulling the trigger on something there. So hopefully this gives you a better idea of what's going on out there and how you can get the bike you're looking for this year. Be sure to drop me any questions or comments you have down below. I'd love to hear from all of you. And most importantly, get out there, ride your bike, have a great time, and I hope to see you out on the trails.